Today's topic is 3 keys to throwing a nasty breaking ball, and this is Tips with Trev, the show where I give developing baseball players some easy tips to end their slumps faster and become a superstar sooner. Let's get to it. There's a very good chance that how you've been taught to throw a breaking ball is dead wrong, so let's fix it. Tip number 1, stay neutral as long as possible. And what do I mean by that? Well, you want your hand to be in a neutral position, like if it was hanging down by your side, or if you were shaking someone's hand. You would not shake someone's hand by being supinated or being pronated to go shake their hand. No, you offer the handshake in a neutral position. Same thing with the baseball. You do not want to be turning the ball towards second base. You do not want to be maximum supinating. You don't want to, just stay neutral. That's it, just stay neutral as long as possible. So that means as your arm's coming up, you want to be in a neutral position. There's no tension in my forearm right now. It's just, this is kind of where my forearm hangs out, and that's the position I'm going to be in. As you're going to throw, you want to stay neutral. You don't want to be turning right here and then being, trying to throw and no, don't do any of that. Just stay neutral. That's the first tip. You got to just stay in a neutral position as long as possible to let your arm unfold. That's going to put you in the position to be on the outside of the baseball. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but tip number 1 is stay neutral. Tip number 2 is what I call karate chopping. So if you had a board in front of your face, you're going to try to chop through it with your hand, you would have a stiff wrist. You would line everything up just like this, and you would chop through. You would not have a bent wrist. You would not cock your wrist like this. It would not be limp, and it would not be like super strong and in a fist. No, you would just have a nice aligned stiff wrist like this in a karate chop position, and you would go like this. So same thing, you get your grip, you align your wrist in this position, karate chop, grip the ball, and that's how you're going to throw the curveball or the slider or the cutter or anything. It's just you have to have a stiff wrist and you have to karate chop. Put your hand on the outside of the ball. So here's my curveball grip, for instance. This is stiff wrist. I'm not going to bend it. I'm not going to try to curl my wrist to get around it. I'm not going to try to twist my wrist. I'm not going to try to pull the lampshade down or twist the doorknob or anything like that. No, I'm going to stay neutral with my arm position, and I'm going to lock my wrist in a stiff karate chop type position, and then I'm going to deliver the ball. What does that do? That puts my hand on the outside of the ball. So now I can actually go from this position and generate a curveball spin, or I can generate a slider spin, or I can generate a cutter spin, or I can do a lot of different things with the ball. If I'm pronated early in the delivery, I'm working behind the ball, and then when I go to try to throw it, I'm trying to turn around the ball. That's not going to work. You can't do that. You can't time things up correctly. It's going to be inconsistent. You're putting your arm in the exact opposite way it's supposed to work. The arm is supposed to work from supination to pronation as you're throwing. Supination is tied to external rotation of the shoulder. Pronation is tied to internal rotation of the shoulder. As you're throwing, your arm externally rotates, then it internally rotates. Similarly, you would want to supinate to then pronate. So we have to stay neutral. That's going to allow that natural transition to happen. We have to have a stiff wrist. We're not trying to manipulate our wrist. Just lock it in, get your grip, and that's it. Tip number 3 is to create tension. What do I mean by tension? I got to take my Oura ring off really quick so I can show you. When I say create tension, you want to create tension on the ball. But you don't want to do it by squeezing the ball super hard. You want to have something in your grip create tension. So I can hold the ball in here like this. And if you can see, there's a lot of, there's tension on this finger. If I try to rip the ball out of my hand, when I have a good grip on it, there's tension. I can't just pull it out super easy. I'm not trying to squeeze it. I'm just talking about getting the grip to the point where you create tension on this middle finger. This is where the ball is going to come off of. This is what's going to spin the ball and increase the spin rate of the ball, which is important. But you have to create tension. So you can do it in a couple different ways. You can do it by pinching between the ring and the middle finger. That creates tension. You can do it by pinching between the thumb and the middle finger. Some people's hands work better that way. That creates tension. You can do it by pulling the ball into your palm. You can do it by spiking the ball. You know, if you spike the ball and then there's tension here, and you can create tension between the thumb, and there's a lot of different ways to create tension, but you have to have some sort of tension on the ball. If you have a loose grip on the ball, it is going to slip out, and you're not going to get to the point in the delivery where you're going to actually be able to rip on a seam or impart spin to the ball and make it spin faster. So this is how I do it. I used to, in college, tuck this knuckle below this seam and this fingertip on this seam. There's a lot of tension there, and then I would suck the ball into my hand with my thumb and kind of keep it deep. There's a lot of tension on the ball right now. I don't do it that way anymore. I just kind of rest this finger down here on above the seam, but the ball is deep in my hand, and then I spike the ball like this, and as I'm pulling this finger back, this creates a lot of tension right here on this fingertip, and that's what actually spins the ball. That's for my curveball anyway. On my slider, it's the same thing. I hold the slider like this, I put my thumb underneath this seam right here, and then I squeeze between the thumb and these two fingertips on the seams. So now I have tension on the ball. So when the ball comes out, these fingertips, when the tension is relieved off the thumb, the fingertips that have pressure then flick. There's a reflexive nature to it, and that's what really spins the ball. And you have to spin the ball fast in order to have a good breaking ball. It makes everything sharper. It makes everything more difficult for the hitters to hit. So tip number 3, create tension on the ball. Now, these 3 tips are not the only things you need to do in order to throw a good breaking ball. There's other things that go into it, like the spin axis and where you locate it and how you throw it, and who you're throwing it to, and all these different things. Those are advanced things. Those are second level or third level things. In order to, you have to start with the basics, and the basics are these 3 things that I just laid out for you. You have to create tension on the ball, you have to have a stiff wrist, and you have to stay neutral as long as possible. Those 3 things, you're going to be in good order to throw a good breaking ball, and then you can advance from there. So, pretty quick episode today, but hopefully it helps. Let me know what you think of these tips, what your experience is, how you've been taught, if this will help you or hurt you. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future content, and I will see you guys on Friday.